it's it's my life. It's really my life from birth to now. But I need to bring other stories, especially in a political climate which is in this country now and which has so many other issues. So I would love to find a way to somehow collaborate with you and all these beautiful children, all this youth which you are working with, to see if that could help to create the content really, and to have their voices heard and to imagine future with them. I would love to do the workshop. Okay, what is the future? So that's in terms of working with children. I don't know if I mentioned or if you had a chance to read about the audience idea. That's what I see it for now. And again, I have, I've done several projects in London, but have not had a chance to see that much work. When you go to theater in the States, it's really preaching to a choir. It's theater people for liberals and theater people. So I usually know 50% in the audience in Downtown Theater or Brooklyn Academy of Music or at the Armory. It's like, it's going to see friends. So when we watch all these performances, they make us feel good. We watch something, what we know, what we agree with, what we talk about in our circles of friends and collaborators.
Do you want to tell a story about two audiences that we saw at Baruch College one day?
Yeah, but one second. But my idea is, how can we bring people together in the audience, groups of people who are not necessarily get along or would be together in some kind of event, and how can we use in the performance to create a framework for a dialogue and generative dialogue between these groups of people. There was one time we went to see Beth Morrison opera. I don't know if you've ever seen her festival. She does this wonderful contemporary opera festivals. And that was in Baruch College. And all of a sudden I see my friends, but I also see a lot of other people and a lot of African-American people. And I was like, wow, there is finally a, diverse audience, like 50-50, everybody together. And then when there was a bell for the performance, all African-American people went to theater A and all white liberals went to theater B. And we realized that there were two different performances happening. So I think that to bring audience together is very important to me. And I've been thinking about how can I work with potential audience to also understand their needs, and maybe spend a year working with different groups of audience, with, let's say, Republicans and Democrats, or people who are financially very secured and poor people, to understand the opinion of one another. And where it comes from, and then bring those two groups of people together for this, very immersive performance, and see where it goes, and how we can create a dialogue.
Well, let me give you three ideas on that.
Yeah.
First of all, Pete Child with a story of a little American boy meeting a young Russian girl over the wall of an embassy cocktail party in Washington, D.C. And when we did it in England, it was a little white boy and a little white girl. But when we came to Washington, we found a staggeringly talented 13-year-old boy from Southwest Washington who was absolutely brilliant. And he was black and the girl was white. Mm-hmm. So the audience came together to see it in the Kennedy Center. It was half black, half white. And they were watching a story of Russians and Americans meeting and making peace between each other. But they didn't see that at all. What they saw was a black boy and a white girl becoming friends and ending the enmity between it. So their experience was nothing to do with what I'd written, but all to do with their experience of being pretty much for the first time in a mixed audience in that beautiful concert hall. So I think that's really important. The second thing that we've done a lot here in the UK, and I don't know if it exists in America, but I'm sure it exists in some form, with forum theatre, which is where you create a forum piece, and then you ask the audience to help finish the story. And that's direct audience involvement in the development of the story, and particularly here in London, where you have huge amounts of knife crime and gang warfare. You know, how you stop the escalation of an argument into violence is something that we found Forum Theatre is a wonderful way of acting out and role-playing the difficulties that you find yourself in. And just as you were speaking, I was thinking of how this young Kenyan girl who's running our economic security workshop, she wants to do this workshop that we're doing for the UN 75th anniversary by getting different people to step into other people's shoes to look at what economic security looks like from a totally different perspective. So you have, you know, a dark-skinned person sitting in the shoes of a white-skinned person, someone who is in a wheelchair being an able-bodied person, a rich New York banker stepping into the shoes of a homeless person, etc. And I think that kind of workshopping is incredibly valuable. And that's the kind of wacky, silly things that we've been doing all the time in Peace Child. And it's really inventive. And what I find from the Peace Child perspective is I've always tried to empower young people to feel ownership of the play that they write, or the project that they're developing, or the book that they're writing and illustrating, so that they feel real pride and ownership of it when it's finished. And so many teachers and others don't really get that process, and it's really hard. But actually, if you do it right, I can confidently say every success that we've had with Peace Child over 40 years has been generated by ideas coming from the young people. And I don't say that, you know, just because I'm an idiot and I haven't had any good ideas. I think it's co-creation of the best kind, because it empowers young people to look at their ideas through the perspective of someone who's older, and enriching their creativity by drawing on others. And that's what older people can provide from their experience. So that co-creation that you're talking about, I think, is invaluable. And finally, I just mentioned, yes, I'm not talking just about Russia and America, because it's much wider than that. And I just saw pop in, as we're talking, this email from my friend in Copenhagen, who has a thing called Youth Island, just off the coast of Denmark, near Copenhagen. And they're doing this thing called City Transformers, which is kids in 100 cities looking how to drive change in their cities. And those are cities all around the world, and they usually meet physically on Youth Island, but this year they can't do that, so they're having a 24-hour rolling event, which, you know, I think will bring together hundreds, thousands of really interesting young people, and I'd be happy to let you tap into that.
Absolutely, I would love to, yeah. Thank you.
But we have so many organizations, you know. I just looked at our database, and over 900 organizations that we worked with over the years in 183 countries. So it's some of those organizations probably don't exist anymore, and, you know, young people grow up and move on, and so it's a constantly changing thing. But getting to young people has never been a problem for Peace Child, so we'd be happy to help you with that.
Wonderful.
That'd be wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think the idea of co-creation both with children and with the audience is very important, you know. So they're both co-authors of the experience, because in the end it is about the audience. So I feel, you know, to create some kind of a model for social and civic practice is extremely important. And that's something I'm very interested. Actually, a very great mentor of mine, Michael Rod with Sojourn Theatre, he did an extraordinary event, an extraordinary performance inviting two different audience groups, and the performances started in one in Portland City and one in a tiny village, and then he brought those audiences together to the wedding, to the wedding reception in a way, to celebrate the union. And three people from a village are sitting together with three people from the city, and they come from very different backgrounds. And the whole idea was like, how can this table now create a toast? But that was, how can we bring two groups of people who would not necessarily, have any contact, no any interest in one another, because they already have the assumption of what the other people are and what they want from them and their relationships. And just to break those assumptions is so important, for me, for this project. How can we break the assumption of what these children activists are, and what they want? How can we go back to their messages and not making them into idols? And how can we have a conversation, not even debate? Yesterday when I was talking to Michael, he was like, well, the debate is about somebody winning. And this is not really the debate. It's some kind of a general conversation to reimagine and imagine something together. So it's not about persuading or changing opinion, but really how can we have this horizontal imaginative platform together? And that's the big goal for this project.
Oh boy, Irina, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult, because if you're asking me to find a way to like and make peace with all that Boris Johnson is doing in my country, I find that almost impossible.
Right.
And yet nothing is worth destroying the planet for. So, we have to coexist with these people.
That's exactly right.
There are things that are happening in the United Kingdom at the moment that are deeply unsatisfactory, as they are in your country. How you can sit and listen to the poison coming out of Donald Trump's mouth is it's hateful. And, my friends in San Francisco are, just waiting for the guy to die, because he's a pimple on the planet. He's not helping.
Right.
And I think that therefore what you're talking about is managing disagreement and moving towards with an audience a shared consensus of what the priority interests are. And that's why I keep coming back to the United Nations, because it was designed and built in America largely by Americans, and it's an expression of what's best about America. And what Eleanor Roosevelt was able to do in the creation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was quite extraordinary. And researching this project, I don't know if you've ever heard, she gave a speech in Paris to the Sorbonne about the difficulties she was having finalizing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights with her Russian partners, who were, of course, ambassadors representing Stalin's government. And the views of Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman and the Americans versus those of Stalin about democracy were about as far apart as you could possibly imagine. And yet she did it. And I think there's something about the tragedy of the UN is that it's never had a female Secretary General, and it should have had one last time. But, there needs to be that feminine empathy. And what we've noticed in this COVID crisis is that women leaders have been far and away more effective than the male leaders. And I think, we talk about Russia and America, Europe, Brexit, all that nonsense of governments. It's actually basically the male and female qualities coming together and finding unity, as it is between the old and the young, experienced and innocent, coming together to find their common ground, their common solutions. And I think that engaging an audience it's tricky, you know. I mean, I find audience participation is often a little bit cringe-making and embarrassing. And what you need to do is to have a device, an approach that empowers an audience in a good way and makes them feel engaged and involved. And whether it's through song, whether it's through movement, whether it's through having, as we've often done in Peace Child, the audience become the crowd scene, you know, cheering along with the kids when things need to happen. It's a complicated task, but you know, I think the theatre is infinitely challenging, and a people's theatre, like a people's UN, is something that we you know, actually America can be very, very good at, probably better than we Europeans. So it's something that I'd be thrilled to explore with you. But as I say, I think it's an area that I step into nervously, because if you have a fantastic series of performers on stage, cast of performers, let them get on with it, you know, and let the audience listen to a well-told story and form their own conclusions at the end of it. But on the ethos of the Space Bridge, you're saying to me that it's not just about theatre, it's about other media as well. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Right. Well, the thing is, I don't think that what I'm doing in terms of organization and in terms of the performance necessarily has to always lead in performance. I think that there are many steps on the way of creating performance, right? Creating these workshops, I can imagine creating dialogues between, two completely different groups of people and have it being as its own event. Really, I'm talking, I guess, about facilitation more than creating, and using visual tools, using space and so on for people to be able to hear one another. So facilitation is definitely a big part of that, and I think there will be many steps in a way which will be the things on their own, which might not necessarily, end up on the performance. I think that certain things, workshops working with kids, can lead into some kind of different educational programs or any other programs. Imagining what I can do between children and adults can also be, to have some kind of intergenerational facilitation trainings or workshops could be super interesting. Bring 10 kids and 10 adults together and see what can come out of that.
I think it's important to realize that we're starting a company of which Space Bridge would be its first main expression. But the company has components that have to do with civic practice and with education and with connecting to communities. In the case of Space Bridge, youth would be the focus. So all of these activities, some of those might result in content for a performance, some of these might be the performance, some of these might exist on their own, but the commonality is performance tactics that inform these types of interactions between the artist and the community, right? So when you were saying, it's not just the play, it's not just the word on the paper or the people on the stage, it's more than that. I mean, a lot of this is aspirational speaking, but that's sort of where we think this company should go in the short, medium, and long term.
Creating relationships is also a product, right? It's just what is the measure of the product and so on. But I think that relationships and putting people together into generative dialogues is a big part of that as well.
I hear you. You mentioned this phrase, generative dialogues, a lot, and it's so interesting because in our conversations about achieving sustainability in the green economy and the move towards a Green New Deal, that is moving towards a regenerative society rather than an exploitative or consuming society. society. And that's a big challenge for the next 50, 60 years. We've got to move towards a regenerative, growing society. And I hear you when you both say that this is, it's almost like the best kind of education. It's the best kind of learning experience that you offer to people anywhere. And that's not a performance, that's not showing off, that's something that happens internally. And how you generate that, how you create that experience for people is through workshopping. I think forum theatre would play a role in that. I think music and movement would play a role in that. Possibly even video would play a role in that. And linking those experiences from different cultures, different ethnicities, it's a fascinating challenge. And again, I don't have any answers off the top of my head, but I think it's an amazing journey that you're starting out on there. And as I say, I love our young people to be involved in it. And I like, just as way back, Irina, when we started Peace Child, there was a fellow who, it wasn't Christian or anything like that, but he had a sort of prayer room in the Pentagon. And he was doing meditation with the American military leaders, who he couldn't have been more different from. But, just the fact that place was there, right. People from totally polar opposite positions were coming together and finding an opportunity of having a peaceful, generative dialogue with each other. And I think that's what you're trying to create. And in cities that have, gone through the kind of convulsions that have happened in New York and Minneapolis, which is another place I know really well, that we need that kind of regenerative dialogue to get us back on the same page, get us back in a place where we can start to move forward and look forward with some hope and optimism. And again, I come back to the fact that the UN needs that probably more than anywhere, because nations are just, at loggerheads, and we don't have visionary leaders like right now, and we actually don't have visionary artists. I mean, I wonder if you remember Peter Daubeny. Does that name ring a bell?
No.
He ran the World Theatre season in London for many years, and he brought performances from China and Georgia and Armenia and Turkey and North Africa, and London was a big hub for world theatre at that time, and then there was the WOMAD Festival, and these great international gatherings of artists were really fascinating and created, a feeling of harmony and togetherness and being part of a human family, which right now we're moving towards fragmentation, which is strange, because here we are, just this afternoon I've spoken to 5 or 6 different countries and like different conversation. We are connected, distance is no longer a problem. We can Google translate any document into 109 different languages, and it's that should be the opportunity for togetherness, but somehow we've lost the appetite to do it.
Yeah, it's when you think about Space Bridge, right? The notion that these people were able to overcome a bias and a polarization that was, largely imposed on us by politicians through technology and tremendous effort and inventiveness. And nowadays we have Zoom at our fingertips, there's space bridges everywhere, and still we're stuck in our bubbles. Right?
Yeah, but not as good at it. Do you know Vladimir Pozner?
Yeah, of course.
Not personally,
but I know him very well. I grew up with his television channels.
Yeah.
So.
No, well, he is a close personal friend of mine. So,
would love to.
And he really helped a lot with Peace Child. Really? He was wonderful.
He's a New Yorker.
He is a New Yorker, yeah, Bedford-Stuyvesant boy.
Exactly.
But actually, he's French. You know,
Yes.
his mother was French. His French is better than his English. It's quite extraordinary when you hear him speaking French. It's
Wow.
like he's a native. Extraordinary.
Well, all three
But-
languages. He's a wonderful facilitator.
He is a very, very good man. And as I say, I would love to feel that, you know, we could. He's 83 now, I think. So I mean, we got to use him while he's still there.
Let's use him, yeah. He still has a very sharp brain, listen.
I'd be intimidated.
No. But he wrote a book. Did you read his book? I know that he wrote
He's
a
written 2 books.
2 books. I have not written either of them, actually.
His books are very good. Yeah.
Okay. I should look into
Yeah.
that.
No, I have a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
But I think as you, we mustn't focus on Russia, America. It's about all of us, and
It's
it's
about
about
That is
uniting
exactly right.
generations, uniting genders, uniting
Great.
peoples in all parts of the world,
Right.
people from different economic backgrounds,
Right.
Republican lunatics with liberal Democrats who know what's right, and it's really difficult.
Absolutely.
But I think that it's a challenge for both our countries. You know, you and America have an immediate challenge. We have.
You're going
Yeah.
in that direction too.
You're joining Russia. We're all
No, you're joining the United States, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, have you seen the Apple Cart?
The Apple Cart?
No.
It's a play by George Bernard Shaw.
I have never seen the Apple Cart. No.
But the Apple Cart, the second act starts with the American ambassador running into the King of England and saying, we're going to tear up the Declaration of Independence. It was a big mistake. We want to become part of Britain. And we'll move our capital to London. And it's a very, very clever scene because by the end of the scene, the king realizes that actually what the Americans want to do is to move their capital to London and then rule the whole of Europe and the whole of the United States from one place. But yeah, we are, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's an interesting challenge how we bring the world together, but that's not the way.
No, that's not even what. Yeah. that's not my absolute goal. I need many lives to do that, but at least they can try. And I think that theater could be, at least theater, what I mean by theater, could be really good tool because
Listen, it's almost 5 o'clock and
Yeah.
I've got to run to another meeting. But what I'd like to say is that I would love to work with you guys on this in any way that I can. I will send you, Irina, because I have your email, the information about the 501c3 that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if it makes sense to you, let's get ahead and appoint a board of directors, have the first board meeting, and deliver a Form 990 to the IRS with your names on it, and get that moving forward. And I'm just winding up, okay? And then we're going to be ready. This is my other half, Irina.
Hello.
Irina and Thijs. Irina
Hi.
from
Nice to
Russia,
meet you.
and Thijs from the Netherlands.
Nice
And
to-
he remembers Soestdijkerstraat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a very, very nice Chinese restaurant on Soestdijkstraat, if I recall.
What's that? Took us a long time to pronounce Soestdijkerstraat.
No, we loved our time.
It's like Scrablandersweg.
Very nice to
Yeah,
meet
that
you.
was very good. Anyway,
Yeah.
so and you know, think about how Peace Child can help you,
Absolutely.
and we'll
One thing we wanted to ask you, if it would be okay for us in future discussions that we'd have with others, to mention your name as a potential partner on the project.
yeah.
Perhaps it
I
would
mean,
be.
you've been very open with me, and I have to say, right now, I'm not entirely clear as to what the project is. I think
Yes, that's correct.
It's a project in the process of creation.
Absolutely.
Before we do so,
what I would say is that I'm interested in the concept and happy to work with you to co-create it. But when finally the project, the company has a determination, then if I'm on the board of directors, obviously I'll be involved, and so
Wonderful.
that's. But however it pans out, as I'm happy to say that we've had these discussions, and we created Space Bridges with Vladimir Posner and Kim Spencer and these others. So of course we're interested to work with you.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Thank you. It's wonderful meeting you, and would love to talk again soon at some point.
So we'll work on some more narrow description of our interests and our tasks, and then we'll feed that back to you, and perhaps with a specific proposition of what we want to do and how we can do that together.
Okay. The more specific you become, the more specifically I can react.
Wonderful. Sounds good. Thank
Lovely
you.
to meet you.
Have a
Thank
great
you so much.
evening. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. It's an intense conversation,
Very good.
but he's like, we need a good board. I can't have only one smart man like this. Well, I'm not as smart, but I can't have, I need people like Bill and Derek and so on the board, but I don't want this guy to be the only powerful man. Like, I want to have Emilia there or somebody.
Yeah, but if you tell Emilia I have the founder and president of Peace Child International on the board, all of a sudden it raises the stakes, right? It draws other people to it. You say I need a strong counterweight to him on the board, then Emilia might be interested. If you're saying, I'm just assembling a bunch of artists, and Emilia, I need you to be the senior and the same person in the room, then Emilia might say, no, thank you. But if you tell her, I'm working with this organization, they're transferring me their 501c3 status, we're ready to go, I want to do amazing things, Emilia, can you help? Then she'll say yes.
Tricky.
I don't think it's tricky. I think it's sensitive, but it's doable, and it's very exciting. Again, we don't have a specific ask.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have anything specific, and we will keep wasting time.
So we need to have some specific
I know.
ask.
So first of all, your conversation about we've already done all this. We put time. That has to go, Thijs. This is a lifetime
I didn't say
thing.
that.
No, yesterday when you
I
were
don't
saying
think that-
you still don't know what the project is about. Absolutely not. He doesn't know what our project is about because we don't know what it is about, and it's very clear. We sent him a grant language to get seed money for the grant. I don't know anything what this project is about. I actually mean it, and I should be free to say this. It's clear. They just, I think they're gonna say we're gonna tighten it up. I have no idea what this is about. But I do want to bring Russia a bit back because right now it's about everything. I still needs to be crazy that Stasnamen is doing this project. That's the theater with, of course, it's like the biggest rock star. It's the and rock star and.
Crazy that he knows Vladimir Posner. I guess.
Stasnamen is the guy who wants to give Dima his seat, and Dima doesn't want to take it because Stasnamen comes from, has a lot of private airplanes. So Dima keeps saying no because everything for Dima will be free. So he's one of the his father was like director of KGB or I would like to somehow have it with Russia too and create something with Russia as well. Something. I think it's important. I'm not, United Nations is not something that I know, although I want to be invited to this. Too bad that she doesn't work at UN anymore. Could have been,
Small?
yeah.
Yeah, I must have mentioned her name.
Okay, we need a board. Crazy. That's next for days 5-1C.
Yeah, that was. I don't know.
We need a board. Derek. Derek said he didn't have time. Again, if I tell him this, he might be interested. And Derek really wants to create relationships with Russians.
Think of a powerful woman rather than a powerful man.
Emila, I mean Teresa, but Teresa has very little.
Talk to me.
Teresa has very little.
I don't know how many
Teresa doesn't talk.
Hmm?
Teresa is not a good speaker. Emilia is a very powerful speaker.
So Amelia is the right person to ask.
I have to look at trainings.
Hmm?
I need to look at what the full-time focus.
What time does Beth Morris start? 1:30?
Huh?
What time does Beth start?
1 o'clock.